Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. Today we have Getwizer here today along with Roots. So Jennifer and Megan are going to walk us through their presentation. Really excited to hear what they have to say. But before we get going, I just wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Just as a reminder, we do have a few different chat channels. So we've got our questions chat, which does have the upvote capability. So if you see somebody drop a question that you also want answered, make sure to go ahead and click that up arrow, and we will try to get to those the best we can. As far as the chat as well, we do have our React function. So if you want the presenters to see the emojis pop on screen throughout, I always love that one. But thank you both so much for being here. I'm really excited to see what we've got in store. So I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining today. Please feel free as we go through to type in the chat and see if any of the themes that we're talking about resonate with you. My name is Jennifer Allison. I actually am from Getwizer, a company that uses a hybrid of technology and people to deliver high quality insights quickly and affordably. We're here today to talk about a very important piece of research that we did actually among parents of kids 6 to 15, all about their shopping experiences, their emotions tied to that, impact on body positivity, as well as key influencers in their shopping decisions and purchasing decisions. And I'm really excited today to be joined by Meghan Roach, the president and CEO of Roots, a major leading retail brand in Canada that is leading the way on many fronts to better meet the needs of their customers today and in the future, including things like the launch of one collection, a new collection that is sustainable, gender-free, and includes inclusive sizing. Meghan joined the company in January 2020 as the CEO. Little did she know what would face her over the next 2 years, but clearly the company and her professionally have emerged quite successfully. In fact, she was recently named one of Canada's top leading women for leaving Canada and the environment around her in a much better place. So Meghan, before we dive into some of the content today, why don't you share a little bit about actually Roots and your own personal background?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about the study that you did. I mean, I think it's really applicable to us as a business and a brand to think about, how that Gen Alpha and Gen Z consumer are affected by shopping decisions. Thank you for having Roots. I mean, you kind of put up on the screen here some of our values, but we're a brand that really focuses on community, integrity, freedom, and being genuine. And so when we think about, people's shopping patterns, we think about children and also adults. One of the things that we've been trying to really do as a brand is focus on inclusivity, equality, equity, and diversity, and thinking about how we can both progress our business from a product perspective, our campaigns, and just our company as a whole in terms of investing in those areas. So I'm really excited to be here. As you mentioned, I joined in January 2020, so it's been obviously an interesting 2 years to be part of the business. But we're really excited about where the brand is going, and I'm excited to talk to you today about some of the things that we're doing in the context of your study.
That's great. And we are excited to hear everything that you're doing. So just to start, and I know that you are a parent of several younger children. Mine are 9 and 11. And, the genesis of the research that we did, I being in insights throughout my entire career, I'm very curious about data and what people say, and also just my own sources of frustration as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I have a daughter who's 11, and we were recently out shopping. I'm 5'7", she's a little bit shorter, just a little bit shorter than I am, and we were out with her friend who is a head taller, shorter than she is, and we were in the section of the store that should be appropriate for her age, and she's outgrowing that sizing. She is in this kind of weird in-between point, and whispered to me, I hate this. And that came with such a negative feeling. And it was really disappointing for me to see that in a child that was so young, to feel that way, to feel that she was somehow outside of the norm when she's at an age where she wants to feel nothing more than being like her friends. And as we know, no one child is regular or normal. Everyone is unique. And so I'm just, curious from you as a parent, is that a frustration that you feel, that you've seen?
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the comment now that there's like something that's akin to regular or normal is really a really antiquated perspective, right? I think I have a 6-year-old daughter and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and one of them loves dresses and, is a little bit more on the petite side, let's say. And the other one is, let's say extremely tall and she loves, kind of everything from sweatpants to, tights, whatever it is. And I think what's interesting about it, I used to spend a lot of time in Europe. I used to live there, and a size 6 in Europe and a size 6 in the US and a size 6 in Canada, they're all very different. And so I think, now when we're thinking about how we define, what we want to buy for our kids and they're looking for themselves, it can be incredibly frustrating as a parent and as a child to be looking for something because, people are still defined by the size in which, is on these clothing, right? So it's definitely an area of frustration for me as a parent, and finding ways to provide flexibility for our kids and ourselves when we're shopping is definitely something that's been top of mind for us as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And not struggling with things that have bothered us our entire lives, even personally. So
absolutely.
And what we see with that experience is the brands and the retailers that, drive that experience means that those future consumers won't want to be connected to those brands anymore. And we know that this generation is actually an incredible generation to focus on. So Gen Z, of course, and everyone is really looking at that generation. Generation Alpha are those that were born in 2010 and onward. And so that's the first generation really that has been in front of technology almost since the day that they were born. They are going to wield incredible spending power. Again, I see this in my own household. It's not so much the store that we're walking by and I want this, but grabbing off of technology, sending it to me on my phone and saying, I want this. And, they're soon going to be driving their own purchase decisions. They are the next generation coming behind. And you can see a couple of facts here. Let me raise this on screen so you can read it even more. That they are 81% of children under the age of 12. They are found to influence family purchases that will translate to 500 billion per year. And they will become the largest generation of consumers, that we have seen. So although they are younger, they wield incredible power. And just a question for you is this segment, on your radar? Is this something that you're looking at? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was interesting about the Roots brand. So we've been around since 1973. So we're 50 years old next year. And it's always been really known as a family brand. So we sell kids clothing, we sell women's, men's, it's quite comprehensive. And, we're definitely always thinking about, how that segment is evolving. I think what's really difficult about that segment is it's really difficult to survey them, right? You can't really speak directly to them, from a company perspective. And so we're spending a lot of time thinking about, who influences them, and also, how do we get to that person that's influencing them? And then what are the big decision-making factors that the children and the parents are making together when they're thinking about clothing? But it's an incredibly important segment, not just because it's a part of our brand from a kids focus, but also, as you mentioned, they have such a significant influence on the future. And as a multi-generational brand, we obviously want to understand what our future consumers are going to be doing. And so we need to be thinking today about, what's going to be influencing them for the future, or else we're going to miss out on that wave.
Yes, that's absolutely. And thinking about that group a little bit further, I will bring up on screen another fact from the data here, which is what are their key influencers around them and in their world. And, not surprisingly, friends and family rise to the top. And certainly those are big numbers. And they also, as we look at the data, we see that changes as a child is younger, of course, more family. And as they age, friends become a really big influence. But underpinning all of this is that idea of the social media influencer at certainly a much lower number at 13%. But remember, this research is done as a point in time. And we would think that if we were to do this kind of on an ongoing basis, that we would expect that number to actually grow. I see it daily with the amount of attention that my kids give to TikTok, to YouTube, to Roblox. And, just wondering this picture, how does that look for Roots? And is this similar to what you would expect or different?
It's quite consistent with our own surveys when we ask people, how are they thinking about their own purchasing habits, and definitely from the children's perspective. I think what's interesting about this is how it actually influences shopping patterns. And so when you think about the family and friends implications, especially from a children's perspective, we definitely think about, when does the school season start? So I know many of us, when we were children, probably had that kind of back to school outfit that we prepared. We went with our parents and we bought something, and that's still definitely something that happens. But the other implication of it we're finding from the friends influence is that it tends to be now kind of a week after school starts where actually, you see a lot of uplift in sales, because people are going to school, they're seeing what their friends are wearing, they're coming back and saying, mom, dad, whoever it is, can you go out and buy me this thing? So that's definitely something that we're seeing impacting kind of the shopping patterns and how we think about planning out our collections. But from a social media influencer perspective, it's definitely rising. I think things like TikTok, Instagram, definitely depending on the generation, they're all very, very relevant. And we think much more about, what types of influencers we're partnering with and, how are they obviously influencing the fashion trends, but also making sure those influencers are really aligned with our values as a company, right? So I think that's something as a corporation that we have an obligation to, is to think about, if you're putting yourself out there, you're partnering with influencers, how is it influencing both, children's shopping habits, but also are they aligning with your company brand values as an overall basis? But definitely really aligns with what we're seeing. And the implications for us are, there's still a significant influence of family and friends on children's shopping behavior at this level. And so it makes it increasingly more important for children to be speaking to kind of the parents, as opposed to kind of even at the children's level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So diving into your one collection, which, I think is tremendously innovative. I grabbed here, a shot from your site. We are one, sustainable, gender-free fit, extended sizes. And even in some of the language down here below, it's something I personally have said, like one size shouldn't fit all. And yet the approach to sizing is just one approach. And, this transcends multiple key themes: sustainability, gender-free, extended sizes. What role did research play in making sure that as you were developing this and bringing this concept to life, that it would, meet the needs of your customers and even those that are, on the younger side as well?
So it was incredibly important to us. I think, the one collection for us was basically a step forward from a directional perspective as a company, right? We are a brand that is really focused on diversity, equality, equity, inclusion, but we're also focused on sustainability. And we're also focused on thinking about how can we broaden our customer base. So when we think about the concept of, people mention this a lot in the omni-channel concept of wherever, however, whenever you want to shop, that should also apply to when you're shopping. You should be shopping the products in the way that you want to shop the products, right? So when we were looking at the one collection, one of the things we had found in our own research was a lot of our female customers were shopping in the men's section. We also had a lot of non-binary and transgender customers who were shopping with us. And we found it was really difficult in a traditional setting where you have just men and women, or same thing for children, for people to be shopping across those things. And so one of the things that we did was we actually went into this group called Albanon that actually does body scanning, and then it comes up with the various pattern sizing, both on the larger sizes and the smaller sizes. And what people don't really realize a lot of times is as your body changes, whether it's smaller or bigger, you can't just take the same pattern and then just increase it in size. There are differences in your body that you need to reflect. So we did a lot of research around that. We actually had over 50 different people come in to try on our one collection before we launched it. And those are people, again, who identified as female, identified as male, were transgender or non-binary. So we really got a cross selection of people who are trying these things on. And then we also did research into understanding what our customers wanted to buy from us. How important was gender-free? How important was the fit? How important was the material? So this is something that has been, research was incredibly important to this. And even on the follow-on, since we've launched the one collection, we're still doing research. We're still testing with our consumers to understand. So what did you buy it for? When you bought it for X reason, is that still why you love it? Or, how are you thinking about the sizing and fit? And one of the things that's unique about the one collection is that it doesn't have a conventional sizing curve. So it's not, extra small women's or extra small men's. We actually use a numerical system of 1 to 7 and 1 to 8, a different range. And you're looking at kind of like, what are the measurements that you want to obtain? Not, do I want to have an extra small women's or an extra small men's? So it gives people the freedom to kind of shop and think about how they want the product to fit on them and not kind of put them in that conventional sizing box that a lot of other brands are still struggling with.
No. And it's actually a really great transition to kind of the next data point that we can show, which is, and this was one of the numbers, that personally drove this research because it's just incredible, which is, kind of understanding from the parent side of you, how many really perceive their child as regular size versus alternates. And even the alternate naming, I struggle with, but plus size, short and petite and tall. And what we see here is that there's 50% that would describe their child between 6 and 15 as outside of the norm in some way. And there's incredible dissatisfaction tied with that, and even more so among parents of tweens. That's really like where we see it as the worst. And what we talked about a little bit in the beginning is that emotional impact that has. So here's just one verbatim that we saw in the research. Children's clothing are cut for short, skinny children. Any child who doesn't fit the average cannot find clothes that fit. And this is so hard on their self-esteem. And it really is that link to the body positivity, to how the confidence that they feel in themselves. And, that can have a tremendous impact. 50% is a really large number. Knowing that there's such dissatisfaction between, fit and the labeled size. What does that say just about the industry as a whole? It sounds like you're tackling it, but, I'd love your perspective on that, because it has an impact.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting. I mean, we're not perfect as a brand, right? We're still kind of going through this, as everyone is. But, one of the things we're really challenging ourselves to look at is say, where do we need to have, let's say specific genders as an example, and where do we not? And so, our baby and our toddler collection, the vast majority of them are actually unisex or gender free, right? Because, at a certain age, there's not necessarily enough differences between the fits of our clothing or the bodies of individuals to really make it matter, right? And I think one of the things we're thinking about is really getting underneath, like, what are children, what's most important to children when they're shopping? And I know we're going to talk about that a bit later on, but from our perspective, and I think about it in my own household, they're facing a lot of different things when they're going to school, right? It's like, how do I make friends? How do I deal with social media? How do I deal with these various things? And the thing that we want them to be is we want them to feel comfortable in their own skin and comfortable in the clothing that we're offering them. So trying to make it less about, well, you're regular, you're tall, you're petite, and more, how do you want your clothes to fit? Do you want an oversized fit? Do you want a skinny fit? Do you want, what is it you're looking for, right? And so it's more about kind of speaking to people in terms of how do you want your clothes to fit, and less about how is your body a normal body, or is your, how are you defined? And so I think for us, especially when we're thinking about our campaigning, we're really focusing less on saying, well, this person is this tall, and so therefore she wears X size. We're saying this person is wearing maybe a size medium because they want, let's say if they were traditionally a size extra small, they're wearing a medium because they like that fit. That's the fit that they like, right? And so thinking about that as part of our kids collection is also something that's incredibly important to us. And we try to portray that in our campaigning. We try to think about that in terms of the way we make our products.
Good. So, and along those lines, right? So with tied to the emotion comes the feeling about the shopping experience as a whole. Now that shopping experience can be either in store, it can also be online, and there's very strong, as it always has been, positive emotions tied with shopping, especially parents with their kids. There's a lot of bonding time, and it can be a very enjoyable experience that, drives both the parent and the children to come back into stores time and time again. But what we also saw, and that's tied very highly to the fact that there is also this big source of frustration to a lot of stress, frustration, exhaustion. Sometimes you're leaving the stores like, I can't find anything. And especially if you're searching for certain kinds of clothes. Some retailers are doing really great. Some retailers are really struggling. And you obviously have a very close pulse on this. Are there things specifically tied to the shopping experience where you're really trying to drive that positive emotional connection, either in store or online, to drive more into that positive versus the negative?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, when we first launched our one collection, we said extended sizing, right? And I think, or inclusive sizing, there's a lot of debate, I think, around kind of the terminology there as an example. And, as we looked at our core collection, we have the one collection that goes up to size 8, which from equivalency basis would be kind of like a triple extra large, men's, and like a 4 extra large in women's. And we're now starting to look at it and say, it's same great item you like in more sizes, not extended size, just more sizes, right? And so when you're thinking about it in the shopping environment, I think what some brands have struggled with in the past is they're creating kind of like separate sections or separate, kind of distinctions of like, well, this is our extended sizing, whether it's petite or whether it's kind of on the other side of it. And we're trying not to do that. We're trying to say, all of our stuff that we're offering is kind of has a range of the sizes within it. And so when you're having a shopping experience and someone comes in, I had an experience last year during the holidays where a mother came in with their daughter, and you could see they were quite uncomfortable because, she kind of said to me, we find it very difficult to find clothes, right? And they would have maybe been defined kind of like outside the regular kind of, type. They were maybe taller, etc. And so instead of saying to her, well, this is the special collection we have that may fit your daughter, we just said, well, why don't we pick a variety of things that we think could work? And then you tell us, you let us know how you think they fit. And we'll think about kind of, are you looking for oversized? Are you looking for slightly more fitted? What are you looking for in your fit? And we'll see what we have that might be able to provide you with that fit. And then the other thing I think is important is also acknowledging in the shopping environment, something we do, or we're trying to do better, is when we don't offer something, we're also trying to say who does. So there's a great company out there called Universal Standard who offers, I think, something from size 00 all the way up to size 40, US-based company. And when we first launched our one collection, one of the questions we had from consumers was, well, what else are you offering in more sizes? And we said, well, we're not quite there yet in offering everything in more sizes. We're kind of working through it. This is our first inwards into it. And now we've extended that into more things. But we would say, but check out Universal Standard. They're doing a great job. They have a lot of things that potentially could be on offer. So I think we need to think about, how we're communicating with our consumers, understanding that it's really about kind of making them feel comfortable in the environment, and also not being so exclusionary in terms of saying, well, you can only shop me for X. Thinking more about how people are outfitting themselves, and also encouraging people to go to brands if you don't have the offering who do. Because you're going to lose that customer anyways, right? You should be thinking about really encouraging them to feel good about themselves and what they're in.
Right. That's tremendous. All right. So this is the first poll, I believe, that will go out to all of you. So just to pay attention to the poll button on your screen. But for you personally, as shoppers or as parents, what kind of emotions does shopping evoke? Positive, negative, both positive and negative, or neutral? We'd love to hear your feedback on that and see what you're kind of responding. For me, it's a mix depending on the experience. How about you, Megan, as a personal shopper?
As a personal shopper, I don't know. I'm not a big shopper. I don't love shopping. I personally find the shopping experience a little bit negative, regardless of the store that I'm in. And with my kids, I do a lot of online shopping now. I'm buying stuff, bringing it home, and hoping it fits them. I'm taking children into a store, especially at 6 and 3, and encouraging them to try something on. I would never say that on anyone. So I'm probably more in that kind of like mainly negative shopping experience. Obviously in our own stores, I love going and seeing the staff, and we've got a great team. But I'm not a big shopper, actually.
Yeah. I still, with parents, being the parent of 9 and 11, I still don't have a ton of time to shop. So I hear you on that. Right. But the main feedback is both positive and negative. So I think that's very telling, with about 77%.
Great.
Okay. So you've talked throughout about diversity and inclusion. I think, about gender-free, but even transcending that, your company as a whole is definitely taking a leading position on this topic. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about, how important is this to Roots, and especially given the fact that it is something that Gen Z demands, and we're seeing nothing different coming from Gen Alpha in their expectations of what they want to experience, what they want their brands to deliver on this front. And this was just a verbatim from a parent of a non-binary child within our survey. Same struggles and wanting to feel comfortable in their skin and wanting to feel comfortable in what they're wearing. Talk a little bit more about the diversity and inclusion focus that Roots has.
So it's incredibly important to us, because I think when you look at our values as a company, one of our values is community, one of our values is freedom, right? And I think that when you think about the communities in which we operate now, they're definitely changing. And I think if you're going to be a brand that's about community, you have to understand the diversity within your communities, and you have to be focusing on thinking about how you reflect that. And so I'm not going to say that we're perfect on this, because I think this is in a continuing evolving state for many businesses and brands, but we're committed to it and we want to continue to move forward. And so we've done everything from, we've created diversity, equality, inclusion councils, which are made of a cross section of individuals. I sit on it, but also people from our stores, our distribution center, our leather factory, all different levels in the organization, all different genders, whether it's non-binary or identify as side gender, multiple different kind of sexual orientations, etc. It's been incredibly important to kind of like hear different voices and think about how we apply those different voices and what we do. We apply that to things like we have a community focused, actually charitable focus. So a portion of our proceeds of our e-commerce sales actually go to charities, specifically focused on some of our value pillars. And we also do things like in our campaigning. You showed the one campaign. If you look at the one campaign, it was incredibly important for us to think about how do we make sure that we show diversity of individuals in our campaigns? Because when you think about it from a child's perspective, I grew up in the finance industry before I came into consumer, and it was incredibly difficult for me to see women in senior leadership roles. And I think back to that as a child now, and you mentioned obviously here from a non-binary child, a parent of a non-binary child, if you're not seeing yourself in campaigns, then do you think you're normal, right? And I think from our perspective, we want to continue to show people of all different types of backgrounds and orientations in these campaigns, because it's important for our children to understand that they are normal, and that there are other people out there who are dealing with the same challenges and issues that they are. And I think as a corporation and as a brand, it's something that's incredibly important for us to do. So we're thinking about that across the spectrum of things that we do. But I think for us, it's it's a continuum and something we're still working towards in a lot of places, but definitely a high level of commitment given our values as a company.
Great. Love it. Okay. So just now thinking about what is important when shopping for clothing. Now we're looking at this again from the lens of the parents, what is important to them, and then what they think is important to their kids. Whether they get that right all of the time is somewhat questionable, but as expected, we're kind of seeing here with the parents, price first, fit and quality. Those are their, as they're kind of exploring and deciding what to buy, those are all very top of mind. Kids first, fit, size and style, and price not in the consideration, which I do see as well. A couple things there. I know, fit being incredibly important. This is just another kind of lens on, even though the child is not actually making the purchase of the product, if it doesn't fit right, they may ultimately decide not to wear it, even if you buy it. So I think you express that experience with your own child. So they're, even though price is not a factor, it's still driving that purchase. Interestingly as well, sustainability, which we see everywhere, there's webinars on it. A lot of brands are tackling it as a huge priority. For this industry in general, it ranked last in importance relative to 10 other factors. That doesn't mean, kind of like the social media influence, we see that as not meaning that it's not important, but we'd love to hear kind of your lens on it, and kind of how important is sustainability to Roots in general, and do you believe brands have a role to play in helping consumers see it as even more important?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting when you look at the factors. We do some of our, we do some similar studies we talked about, before we got on this call. And I think when we look at the price, fit, quality, or the fit, size, styles, we kind of group them almost into comfort and value. And I think when you're looking at that price quality trade-off, it's really about, if something is inexpensive, you may buy it, but it lasts for 3 months. In comparison, if you're buying something that's going to last for 5 years, you might be willing to invest in that kind of quality. And as a brand, Roots itself, we're known for comfort and quality, are two highest characteristics that people associate with us. And I think from a parent's perspective, we were laughing at the price thing, because you can buy the most expensive item, and if your child doesn't want to wear it because it doesn't fit them, they don't feel comfortable in it, it doesn't matter, right? So I think there's definitely a intersection play there between kind of the price and value equation, but also actually kids have to feel comfortable. They want to feel comfortable. They're dealing with so many other things, as we've talked about, that are very challenging for them. So if they don't feel good in their own clothes, that's a big thing. I mean, on the sustainability side of things, for us, it's really important. So we are actually, by the end of this year, we'll have the majority of our products will be made with some sort of sustainable material, whether that's recycled polyester or organic cotton or celluloses. We're thinking about that, and it's really important and top of mind for us as a brand. I think that when we think about the consumer's mindset as it relates to that, it kind of has to do with the complexity that, sometimes sustainability can seem really challenging. And I think that as a brand, if we can make it easier for people to be investing in things from a sustainable perspective, if we can say to them, it's still a great, the features of here are so great, that the quality is great, the value is great here, and it's also sustainable, I think that we believe people will continue to invest in those types of businesses and brands. And I think we also do have an obligation as organizations to think forward in terms of from the Gen Alpha perspective, like what the world is relieving to them. So we do have to make commitments as businesses and brands, even if people are not quite there yet. I think they will continue to get there over time. Because I think if you did this study 5 or 6 years ago, sustainability might not even been on the factors. And when we do surveys, we see it increasingly going up in the rank of importance. So it's definitely really important to us. And I think from a generational perspective, we see that kind of the Gen Z thinking it's very important, millennials thinking it's more important. And I think as you go younger in terms of the generations, it's definitely something that continues to be flagged as more important. And it's a big focus for us as a business.
Right. Well, and just one other thing on sustainability, because I see some other companies kind of struggle with it a little bit, is sometimes being sustainable comes with a higher price. Sometimes it doesn't. There's also a perception too that, sustainable, what does that mean? And there's a lot of fragmented feedback from consumers about what it actually means. So knowing that you're putting such effort behind being sustainable, is there a consumer education to what that means for apparel and why they should
Yes.
care
Yes,
that you're doing
absolutely. Yeah, I think, for us, I mean, there's different levels of sustainability, right? When you talk to people about corporate social responsibility in general, it's everything from talking about diversity, equality, inclusion, to talking about, fair labor standards, to talking about preferred fibers and materials like organics, et cetera, on your clothing, right? And I think so, again, it's a continuum. And I think that, every business has to figure out where they are on that roadmap and then figure out what they can do to invest in it and drive it forward. But I think from a consumer perspective, it can be daunting because there are so many different standard bodies out there. There's different certification levels and people are trying to figure out, which ones are most important. So I think from a branding perspective, our goal is to really be thinking about how can we educate our consumers why it's important, help them understand why we're making these differences and changes and why that matters to kind of us as a business and why it should matter to them. So 100% that's something that we're focused on. But I would say again, just like diversity, equality, and equity, inclusion, for us, we're starting down this pathway. We've made some good progress and we'll continue to make some good progress. But our first focus for us is actually going to be on the materials. And then we're doing a lot of other things in parallel, but the first thing is really assessing our benchmarks. Where do we stand? And then figuring out how we move forward. But doing it in a way where we can, as best as possible, communicate it to people in a very simple way, and help them understand, by buying us as a business, how they are helping the environment and helping things from a sustainability perspective, as opposed to making it too complex for them to kind of know what we're doing.
And I think uniquely for you too is keeping it with high value. So
100%.
it doesn't suddenly drive the price dramatically up. You still as a brand hold that to be,
yeah,
very
the feature price relationship for us is really important. I think that definitely organics are more expensive, and I think in some of those cases you'll see increased prices in specific areas associated with that. But I think that people also have to understand kind of why that is and how it goes down the value chain and who it's going to, and I think they're all interlinked. So if you have organic cotton and you're thinking about fair labor standards, obviously you're making sure that you're paying the people who are making this clothing a higher level. That's all, that stuff is really, really important. So for us, it's definitely a very important piece as a brand and something that we're continuing to invest in.
Great. Okay. And then I think we have another poll. So just to pay attention to the poll again. So just for you personally, what are your top 3 factors when shopping? So this is another opportunity for you to input into your opinions here, and we'll be excited to kind of see your feedback. Again, just from my lens, it's amazing to me how price does not cross my daughter's mind at all. And the brands that she sends to me, the price for a pair of pajamas, I can't believe. So I love the fact that you are very much focused on providing the great balance of quality and price, which makes that much more accessible because they're constantly growing and I have to constantly buy.
Well, I think what's funny about it too, we talk to people, because we've been around for almost 50 years, and some of our products we've been making, our salt and pepper sweats, which are kind of in this photo back here, we've been making those since 1973. And the number of people I speak to who are like, yes, Roots, like I have something from 30 years ago. The thing about making products that last is that you're willing to invest in that quality. And I think about my kids and what they do on the playground, and you want to have stuff that is actually going to make it through a year. They're growing fast, but I have 2 girls, and I'm handing down things to them. So if I buy a pair of sweats or I buy like a nice sweater for one of them, then I know the next one can wear it. That for me is great. And that's something where I think about when I'm investing in clothing, how I have that price value trade-off for sure.
Yes. And what we see from the audience here is fit is top, followed by price, and then style. So we see those same top 3, sustainability also here at the bottom, but not to suggest it's not going to continue to grow. Okay. And we cannot have any discussion about shopping without understanding the dynamic of in-store and online. And, I just think that this is an interesting dynamic. We are different phases of the pandemic all of the time. In-store definitely continues to maintain a high degree of importance in the sense that we see 38% shop mainly in-store. Of course, a lot shopping both. But exclusively online or mainly online, about 27%. I'm sure if we did this a couple of years back, that mainly online would have been much lower. So obviously it's growing. So there's a world where you need to balance between both. Just, more of a fun thought for you as one of our kind of final questions here is just thinking about your customer of the future, the Gen Alpha coming up with technology in their hand all of the time. how do you see the balance of the two worlds and, that shopping, either in store or online evolving over time?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that concept of, people want to shop now. We've seen during the pandemic, it's whenever, however, and wherever, they please, right? And so, I can see my own shopping patterns that, some days I don't want to go to a store because it's just, I know something's going to arrive fast, or I don't need it for a couple of days, and I'll order online, and that's fine if I know my fit and I know the brand really well. But the in-store shopping experience is really important. And I think, we forget, I think, because our generation spent a lot of time in malls, that that's a unique concept for the Gen Alpha, especially those who are growing up during the pandemic. And I think people still love that experience. I mean, we see these same results in our environment. Online's a really important channel, but we're focused really on how to create a symbiotic relationship between them. So we have one pool of inventory that crosses actually our retail stores and our online channel. So during the pandemic, when our stores were closed, we fulfilled from our stores actually for our online channel. And then now that their stores are open, if we see more demand in our stores, we can shift inventory around. So I think building up systems and the capabilities to kind of be able to flex very simply and easily between the two of them is important. I think that where we're seeing the online aspect become increasingly important is actually mobile. And people are using their mobile shopping devices, whether that's in store or at home, to actually make purchases online. That's becoming increasingly important. And so thinking about how you're engaging with consumers on that channel and understanding that there's kind of an endless aisle capabilities within your store formats is going to be increasingly important to us. But when we look at these results, a lot of people say to us, we want to have a touch and feel the product still. That's really important. It goes back to that fit, the comfort, the quality. There's nothing that can replace you actually picking a piece of material up and rubbing it between your hands and seeing what that means. I think we all kind of continue to shop that way. So we see these results being also quite important. And as we think about the shopper of the future, it's about making it a seamless experience for them to shop wherever they want. And making sure that we really are investing in both channels to be very, very symbiotic and very much supporting each other.
Yeah. And, one dynamic actually that triggers for me with this upcoming generation is the immediacy effect. So when they want something, they want it very quickly. And, with the online environment, of course, it's not necessarily in that immediacy effect, which drives you to go more to that in-store. Do you see that as kind of a big thing to kind of think about in the future?
Yeah.
And you want to have more of that online?
Yeah, I mean, when it's funny, when we do our surveys, one of the top reasons people don't buy Roots is because there's not a store near them, right? And so I think, to your point, that immediacy effect, if you're in a mall or you're in an environment, having something close by is something that definitely drives purchasing behavior. I think that immediacy is definitely important, but I think that there are, you see it with some brands and retailers who give you a choice as to when you want the product in terms of how long you want the shipping. We see the immediacy effect being most important for us around the holiday seasons, when people need to buy a specific date or they're buying it for a specific occasion. So it's definitely something that factors into our consideration set. But we're also thinking about, again, people are using online for understanding what the product is, product knowledge, all these different types of things. So again, for us, it's really about investing in how do we think about those two supporting each other.
Okay. So one final poll, the last one: how do you shop? Mainly in store, online only, both online and in store. I'm pretty sure we'll see many land here in this third bucket, but I will click over here just to kind of get a sense of that. Voting is yes, although I'm actually here. It's evolving quickly, so I'm excited to see.
Changing landscape. It's funny when we ask this question every year in our brand health surveys, because we think that's just a really important thing to track your customers. And we definitely have seen over the last year that there's more people who are in that both online and in-store bucket, who in comparison to previous years. But surprisingly, as we've talked about, the in-store piece is still really important. It still remains a really relevant channel for people.
Absolutely. So we've got about 63% both online and in-store, then followed by in-store, and online only about 17%. So definitely still a strong in-store component. And here, I think this resonates a little bit. It's hard to tell sizes online. You need to go to the stores to determine it, and then you can buy online. So that was our final question. I just want to wrap up with like a few lessons learned from this conversation, and Megan, feel free to add on. But at least what I hear from you and what you're doing at Roots is thinking ahead is critical, especially for heritage brands that want to stay relevant, not just for today, but for the future. While Gen Z is a force to be reckoned with, one that we're staying very close to, keeping that pulse on Gen Alpha in any way possible, realizing it's difficult to research them, is going to be the best to set you up for success and to start planning for that future. Great opportunities stem from incredible sources of frustration. We saw that here where individuals are making constant trade-offs to find the right clothing for them that makes them feel comfortable in their own skin, fit well, give them that confidence. And you discovered a way with that one collection, and I'm sure that's just the beginning, to make sure that you're doing just that in many ways more than size. We're seeing other major retailers follow suit. I think just last week I saw Victoria's Secret talking about Happy Nation, just dedicated to tweens, sharing some of these same benefits. And I'm happy to say that you're one of the first of hopefully many that will take a similar path and make the change that has been needed for a very long time. And lastly, I think brands that build very trusted relationships with their customers on all of the values that you spoke of at the beginning and throughout, create that positive experience, that strong, positive emotional connection, and build brand loyalty over time, which I think transcends not just retail, but any of the brands that you work on in the audience today. I think all of those are key themes that are important to keep very top of mind. So again, I thank you so much for bringing a real story to some of the numbers that we saw here. And we wish you such great continued success at Roots going forward.
Well, thank you very much. And I just say, you know, from my side of things, one of the things we learned a ton is around testing and learning.
Yeah.
You know, it has been a really important process of our journey in a lot of these areas. And, you know, sometimes if you take a big bet and it doesn't do well, then it can be very challenging, as we all know from a business perspective. And so doing as much as we can, testing and learning, and then making the big investments once we see the feedback on that has been a really important part of our journey.
Excellent. All right. So I guess at this point, we open up to questions. I believe, Natalie, you're helping us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to hop into the Q&A. It looks like we've already got a few questions lined up. So I wanted to start off with a question for Meghan, actually. I know we might have touched on this a little bit, but since parents and kids are looking for different things when they're shopping, what does Roots primarily focus on?
So, I mean, we primarily focus on comfort. And so, you know, one of the things I mentioned before is that when we do our own consumer surveys, the two most highly associated things with Roots are the comfort and quality of our products. And so we're trying to find that nice, I think, position between parents and children where, you know, they're coming in, they're finding something that they love because it's great quality, it's got great longevity of it, but kids feel comfortable in it and they want to wear them. And part of it is it's incredibly difficult, as I think we've talked about, to actually survey that Gen Alpha consumer. And so we are still really focusing on parents from a communication perspective. But we are trying to do different things to engage with the kind of the Gen Alpha we have something coming in the pipeline later on this year, focusing on kind of encouraging kids to get out into nature and those different types of things that really kind of like tackle that. But you'd be surprised once you get children in one of our products, they find them so comfortable that they're coming back for more and they're kind of pushing their parents the other way. My children, we have the beaver is kind of a symbol of our brand. And my youngest daughter, who's 3.5, will kind of be like, where's my beaver shirt? Where's my beaver clothing? You know, she wants that because she knows it's really comfortable. So I think for us, if you continue to focus on comfort as a brand, you're going to get the pull and push from both ways. Parents are going to love it because their kids are happy, and children are going to ask for it because they love the feeling that they have when they're in the clothing. Yeah,
I love that. Awesome. And it looks like we have one question. I'll leave this up to both of you to kind of both feed into this, but 6 people wanted this answered, so I figured we might as well get to it. It says, can you tell us what your customer research process looks like in a little bit more detail? How do you recruit customers of that age? What nuances in recruiting were there? What methodologies specifically were you using?
Yeah, Meghan, that might be good for you to talk a little bit about.
Sure. So I think, from our customer research process, it depends. We do a number of different types of things. So one thing we do is an annual consumer survey where we do a survey of both our customer base as well as customers externally that goes through a number of different kind of brand health criteria. It's an online survey typically, but it goes through things like brand awareness, you know, product categories that people would associate it with us with. We do the kind of like, what have you bought? What would you buy? And then what do you think we make, to see kind of what the gaps are between those types of things. We ask customers a lot around, why haven't you bought us? Or, you know, why haven't you bought specific products, et cetera, from us? That's one area we focus on. So kind of those broad consumer surveys. We also do focus groups and context labs. So as we think about a brand positioning, we do some of those we pick smaller groups of individuals to ask them, kind of, what do you think about what we're doing here? How does it resonate with you? We also do things like, from a product testing testing perspective. We use things to kind of say, look, this is the product that we're coming out with. How do you think about it from a color perspective, from a fit perspective, those types of things. And then the one thing we do from a consumer research perspective, being a business that is, vast in nature from a employee perspective, is we really encourage our own employees to buy our products. And we do a lot of testing amongst our own employees. So you will see, if you walk around the Roots head offices, or obviously in our stores and in our distribution centers and leather factory, everybody is wearing our clothing. And so we're constantly asking them from a wear testing perspective, like, what did you like? What did you not like? And we iterate off that. And then the other thing we do, because there's a lot we do, so I'll stop there and then maybe see if Jen has any perspectives on how you recruit that age, because that's tough for us. Is we also mine our online data as much as possible. So we look at what customers are searching on our own site. We think about kind of like what has the highest searches versus the conversion that they have. And weekly we do assessments of like how our different emails, et cetera, perform and how that performs relative to the industry. So we do a lot of different research in a lot of different areas across the business.
Yeah, and directly recruiting kids of that age, of course, is very difficult. I think that the parents are, of course, going to be the gatekeeper. Although we have, not for this research specifically, but I have even done product testing feedback from kids. You ask the questions in a different way, in a simpler way. But I will tell you, I was talking to my daughter and her friend this morning at the bus stop, and I was saying, brands want to know what you guys have to say, and they're like, I'll help. So they are a group that wants to have their voice heard. So assuming that the parent will give that access, I think that they are an amazing group that wants to help you be better for them. So I think they've got no shortage of opinions to share, and whether that comes through a parent recruit who can access the child, I think it's a great thing.
Awesome. And Jennifer, I kind of wanted to throw another question your way. How long does a report like the one you spoke about today typically take? How often do you feel brands should be conducting this type of research?
We are a company that feels very much about anytime you've got a question, you should have the opportunity to access your potential customers and research that as quickly as you need. And the pace at which things are changing, the pace at which competitors are coming at you, that needs to be available to you within a very short period of time. So, depending on the complexity of the number of questions that you have, it can be a few short hours to a few short days. So our intent is to get you that information in your hands so that you can make that information, take action as quickly as possible.
And if I could just maybe build on that too, I think, what's been interesting in my conversations previously with Getwizer is that, we used to do these research reports and you'd say, well, you'll have it in 3 months, right? It's going to take you forever to design and do the work. And the speed at which Getwizer is doing that now, is incredibly important because things change so much over a period of time. To be able to get it in a couple hours or a couple of days makes such a massive impact for businesses like us who need to have that at the top of mind as they're thinking about developing campaigns and parts of their business.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Jennifer, when is the full report coming out?
Yeah, that should be available within the next week or so. So we are excited to share the full results. We only gave a little bit of a teaser to some of the data points. There's a lot more behind it. And, to be honest, we are looking at our next topic that we'd like to cover. So I welcome in the chat any hot topics, themes that anyone has. We'd love to do some research on it. We're curious by heart. We love bringing stories like this to life. So it's been awesome. Really fun to dive in.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep an eye out for that for sure.
Yeah.
And Meghan, are there any collaborative efforts for brands to offer more inclusive sizing standards, or do brands like Roots typically work in isolation?
No, so I think I mentioned a company before called Alvanon, which actually does about body scanning to actually think about kind of the various sizes, and so they're a good position to look into. I also think what I think from this perspective, as brands, we need to also be kind of open in terms of sharing our learnings. So we're trying as much as possible to kind of be inclusive in terms of our conversations. I would also recommend when you're making your products, we talk about the fits. It is important to try them on multiple different people of multiple different sizes. And so I think historically, when you, from a apparel perspective, did a fit, you had a fit model, you had one fit model. You tried everything on that one fit model and you left it at that. We have multiple fit models. So we bring a lot of different people in internally to do that. And again, other brands are doing the same thing. But there's definitely a lot of different industry bodies out there that are doing different things. And so I would encourage people to kind of look to them, but also encourage people to think about, do you have a standard fit model? And is that fit model actually going to be reflective of the nuances and different sizing when you're actually doing things?
Yeah, awesome. And so my understanding from the question that from the presentation today in general, we were looking at data both from parents as well as from Gen Alpha themselves. So I just had a question come in just wanting to clarify that and just understanding where that data is coming from.
Yeah, this is actually from parents. So the survey was among parents of kids 6 to 15, and they were responding in some questions to what they believe is important to their kids versus what is important to them. But it is still from their mindset of their kids. So,
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for touching on that.
Yep.
And then for you, Jennifer, how important do you feel Gen Alpha is to other sectors as well?
I continue to be surprised every day what is coming from my kids in this age group, and I feel that there's going to be a big impact from them across industries. So as the previous generations, like no matter what vertical our clients sit in, everyone has looked at millennials and Gen Z. I think this is just no difference. And I think that there's an opportunity perhaps to get to them a little bit earlier than maybe we started looking at Gen Z, because as I said, they are so open to sharing their voice. They've been with technology since the beginning. And I think it's a great opportunity to try to, get their feedback. And as Meghan said, test and learn, with them, because they are an amazing generation that's coming our way here into driving their own purchasing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. And if anybody has any other questions, make sure to pop those in the chat right away, and we will try to get to those as quickly as we can. We are coming up on time though, but thank you both for such a lovely presentation. I feel like I learned a lot about Gen Alpha and understanding kind of their habits, as well as, not as a parent, like, my goodness, sorry, can't talk today. You both as parents, I feel like have a lot to contribute to that and the studies itself. So thank you so much for everything today.
Oh, thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was great to have the chat.
Yes.
All right. Well, hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much for having me.
Bye.